Hey everybody, it's Ed Dale here. Sorry about the late start. I just wanted to welcome you all. Way too late there, ScreenFlow, way too late. Okay, um, I'd like to welcome you to this very special webinar. I'm going to do a couple of these over the course of the next couple of weeks. And the reason is that after 3 years, my mentoring program is shutting down. And I finish in just a couple of weeks' time. And it's been a time of reflection for me. And I've sort of thought back, and what I want to do in this series is present to you the key learnings, the things that I've picked up most when it comes to the things that I learnt during mentoring, because I have learnt as much, if not more, than the people I have mentored. And today's topic is the single, perhaps biggest issue I think people have, which is that ability to make a transition from working for somebody else for full time to making that transition to going to somewhere where you are working for yourself, you've created your own online business, or indeed you're at the position where you can make the choice. Because there are a lot of people who like their day jobs. And this issue has been incredibly thorny over the years, and I think I have made some pretty big distinctions when it comes to this, and I wanted to share those with you today. Now, the format of today is that I'm going to do a relatively short presentation, so make sure you stick around. It won't take long at all to get the key positions. I'm going to bring on somebody who, during the mentoring, in fact, I actually made every single mentoring student I ever had over the last 3 years watch a presentation by Pete Williams. And we've got Pete Williams on to answer my questions about the key things that he knows to help transition. And then we're going to take your questions. So I'm hoping the majority of the time is with your questions today. So let's get fired off. And so the topic here is, as you can see on the screen, transition. And to me, there's a series of realities here that are crucial that people have to understand. And if I go to my mind map here, to me, the reality here is not strategy and tactics. Okay, the first thing that I've picked up over 3 years of mentoring, if there is one thing, absolutely one thing that I know is true, is that it is not the lack of a strategy or a tactic that stops people from making the transition from full-time to working for yourself. So from full-time working for somebody else to full-time. It's absolutely not that. It's not lack of courses. There are many amazing opportunities out there. There's magcasting, there's Kindle publishing, there's local business marketing. There's all sorts of opportunities out there for you. But honestly, this just isn't what's the problem. It's absolutely not it. To me, the single most important factor is understanding some realities about what we are doing when it comes to starting and transitioning in this business. So if we look at ourselves, and if we look at the here we are, if we look at the first and most important thing that we need to understand here, is that above everything else, starting any business, let alone an online business, is a team sport. There is no getting around it. That's the facts. Now, unfortunately, I have to put my hand up because in 2004, 8 years ago, you could do exactly that. And indeed, the underachiever system and the whole challenge in the early days, you could literally do it all yourself. There was no problem with it. The reality has completely changed. Your ability to spread yourself thin over a lot of topics has changed. And the main why has that changed? Is it because of product? No, in fact, it's easier than ever to create your own products. You know, I'm doing this entire presentation on an iPad mini, for goodness sake. It's never been easier to create products. Of course, if you don't know how to create products, it may seem incredibly daunting, but you can absolutely do that by yourself. Product creation is not the issue. Conversion and testing is also not the issue here in this day and age. You know, conversion, or another way of saying it, you know, making the sale or getting people to buy your stuff, that hasn't changed. The fundamentals of that go back to the Egyptians. That hasn't changed, and that requires somebody with creativity, aka you, testing things. You know, there's no special secret sauce. There's no, you know, while large-scale testing might require a team from a logistical point of view, in theory, you could do that all yourself. Now, of course, when it comes to market research is, again, something that you can absolutely do it by yourself. Sure, you can maybe do it more efficiently in a team environment, but you can absolutely do it by yourself. So there's 3 things out of a magnificent symphony of 4 parts. Where's the problem here? The elephant in the room is traffic. Traffic is absolutely the single biggest problem that I see looking at hundreds and hundreds of businesses every year, working with people individually. Traffic is the thing that has changed the most if I look back over the last 8 years. In 2004, traffic was the easiest thing on the planet. You did the most basic form of SEO. You did the most basic form of 5-cent click traffic buying, and you had more traffic than you could shake a stick at. It was absolutely not a problem. What's the reality today? The reality today of any market worth its salt is probably $1 a click to test. You know, to get even a vague, decent testing traffic, you need to spend somewhere between $500 and $1,000 per individual trial. SEO, well, you know my views on SEO. You know, SEO is effectively dead as far as I can see. Now, what do I mean by that? Do I mean that somebody's not going to be at number 1? Of course somebody's going to be at number 1. Do I believe that anybody can manufacture an environment so they will absolutely be assured of being number 1 for a particular phrase? No, I'm not convinced of that at all. In fact, that's my position, is that I cannot be convinced. Has that been the case in the past 13 years before this year? Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. It could be the case. But now, I'm sorry, no, it's just absolutely not the case. So, when I look at all of this, and I look at this as an issue, I realize that having a team is important. But there's a problem here, right? You're working full-time, and it's you. So how can you possibly make that transition? And the facts are, you can't make that transition by yourself. But by the same token, you can't, there's this catch-22. We need a team, but we're by ourselves and we're starting out, and perhaps we don't have all the resources. We don't have thousands of dollars to spend. Let's flick back to the mind map here. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about here, and look at that spelling, lovely. Amateur or pro? In fact, let's back to here. This is a fundamental question, and I want each of you on this webinar to think about this. Are you an amateur or a pro? And here's the deal. There's nothing wrong with being an amateur. People use the term in a disparaging tone. Oh, you're an amateur. Hey, I'm an amateur golfer. I have no intention of being pro. I enjoy golf, but I'm an amateur. I'm definitely an amateur guitar player. I love it. Am I going to earn my living playing guitar? No. Do I want to? No. Does that keep me up at night wanting to be a pro guitarist? No. I just love doodling around like I do. And that's cool. No problem whatsoever. But here's the thing. if you really want to make that transition from working for somebody else full-time to having your own thing, guess what? You have to be a pro. You have to be a pro about it. And pro is not hours spent. It's not about hours spent. And this is the thing I learned in the last 3 years. It's got nothing to do with hours. I would work with people that would tell me proudly that they spend 14 hours a day in front of their computer. And I instantly say, well, something's really screwed up there. That's a real issue, because if you're spending 14 hours a day in front of your computer and you are where you are at the moment, there is a severe mismatch. People, and I'm absolutely convinced, confuse time spent in front of their computer or on their iPad with building their business. No, it's not. There is no correlation at all whatsoever. The concept of going pro is having the discipline to turn up, sit your ass in a seat, and do the stuff that you need to do. Now, that could be all platitudes. That could be all, oh, yeah, Ed, gee whiz, rah, 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 big deal. I get that. I understand that. But what I'm going to prove to you today, and I think this is pretty damn new stuff, is that without that wanting to deliberately practice the art of going to your business and turning pro, you're screwed. And this is what has screwed a lot of people. So let's think about where you are today. Okay. Oh, actually, before I do that, theory of resources. Let me talk about that. When you have, I get a lot of people who say, "Oh yeah, I'm really keen about my online business. I'm super certain about it. I really want to do this thing. This is what I want to do. I'm super serious." Well, there's an interesting situation. If you look at corporate strategy, and I've been doing a lot of reading of disruption theory and the writings of Clay Christensen. In fact, my book of the year, which I'll be revealing in a couple of weeks' time, is written by Clay and a couple of other people. But one of the core tenets of when you look at a company and what their stated strategy is, what they want to be doing, but then to actually look under the covers and see what they're actually doing, there's a very simple test. And that test on the company is, where are they spending their money? Where are they spending their time and resources? Not what they're saying out of their mouths, but what are their actions? Where are they spending their money and where are they spending their time? It's a really crucial thing. And when you're online, and what I've discovered over 3 years of mentoring, people can tell me till the cows come home that they're serious about this business. But if they're spending most of their time working for somebody, 9 to 5, 40 hours a day, hey, we've got to eat, folks. No problem with that. And they're spending most of their, and they've got a hobby, and they might be horse riding or whatever. That's great too. I love that. Good on you. Fantastic. They might be watching The Housewives of Beverly Hills. No worries. I love it too. I'm with you. But if you're talking about allocation of resources, guess what? You're not going to have a business. You're not going to, because it's not an actual priority. And I ask every single one of you on this webinar this evening to think about where you are actually spending your time. Where are you actually spending your money? Because that will give you a true indication of your life's priorities. And if there's, forget companies, in businesses, and in personal lives, this is way more the case. That the words that you say and tell people do not match the actual reality. And trust me, folks, I have been there. For years before I actually did something, I watched a lot of courses. I loved it. I got educated and intellectually stimulated by all of these great courses and things like that. But I was just watching them. I wasn't doing anything. And when you understand the research that I'm about to tell you in a couple of minutes' time, which will blow your minds, you'll realize what a tragedy that is. So where are you spending your resources? This is a big deal. Before I get to burn the ships, let's have a look at this. Let's talk about entrepreneurs for a second. You know, when you develop, all of you are driven people. If you are listening to this, thank you so much. The fact that you're taking time out of your attention challenge day is amazing to me, and I really, really appreciate it. Because for most people, you are working hard in a job. You've got to pay the bills. You've got to pay the rent. You've got to pay the mortgage. Absolutely with you, right? And if you're an entrepreneur, typically what I find, particularly with my mentoring students, is that they don't just have any job. They actually have a job with a lot of responsibility. They actually have a job that is intellectually very taxing. And people think just because they sit in front of a desk where it's not potentially physically exerting, that somehow they can come home and be mentally active and fit for doing an hour or 2 hours of work on their business that they hope to turn into something that is more than a dream. Guess what? It works identically. Most people don't acknowledge it. But if you look at how anybody practices the art of what they do, they have a process, they have a routine, and it is very intellectually challenging and exhausting. And so if you are coming home after a day of really mentally working hard, to try be creative when you get home is really tough. And the good news is it, think about this, and this is where I get influences from everywhere. Is it really tough for you to come home and play Angry Birds Star Wars? Or is that just me? Can you muster up the mental energy to play Angry Birds Star Wars or Call of Duty or Farmville or games, right? Or indeed watch a TV show? No, it's fun. And some TV shows are intellectually challenging. All the psychological intricacies of Housewives of Beverly Hills. It's, to follow that along is mentally challenging. When you think about it, there are things that you do which are very intellectually challenging. Puzzles, doing a jigsaw puzzle, playing a guitar, that are really mentally challenging, yet are a source of enjoyment. They're a source of refueling. They're a source of excitement. Why can't we have that in our job? Why can't we have this as part of what we are doing in creating our new business? Study the theories of gamification. It's a huge new area. Why would somebody go home after a hard day and spend 4 hours on Farmville clicking effectively a pixel on a screen and feeling a deep sense of obligation to help other people out on their farms? Why would they do that? Well, there's reasons. And if we can figure out those reasons and apply them to our own business, so make more of our business a game, something that's enjoyable, well, now we're starting to get somewhere. We are starting to get somewhere. Here's the problem. Remember, our big issue is traffic in a lot of ways, right? Trouble is, to get traffic, many tasks are repetitive and they do not require judgment. This is death. It is absolute death. You are all entrepreneurs by definition, and the entrepreneurial mind cannot handle routine that does not challenge or stretch. They can't do it. But the problem is to do market leadership, to do pay-per-click, to do SEO, to do anything with regards to damn traffic, guess what? Repetitive and as boring as hell. And this is a massive problem because I don't care. And trust me, in the mentoring, I have dealt with some of the most disciplined people on the planet. But if they try to get traffic for their site, traffic for their magcast, traffic for their local business consultancy, it gets them in the end every damn time. If they don't have a team, if they don't have a way of making this fun and interesting and intellectually engaging, they're dead. They fail. And these are people that are brilliant. These are people who are 100 times more disciplined than I am, but they don't have that ability. We as entrepreneurs need to be challenged. We need to be stretched. If we're not stretched and we're not challenged, guess what? I just described any good game. Angry Birds Star Wars gets harder and harder, but a little bit at a time. Keeps you involved, keeps you stretching, keeps you engaged mentally, and it's fun. This is the huge challenge. So people say, you know what? I am going to burn the ships. We all hear the motivational speakers say, you have to burn the ships, quit what you're doing now and head out and, spend 12 months. You've saved up a bank account, you've saved up a balance, and you're going to do this thing full time. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Never works. In 7 years of doing the challenge and 3 years of mentoring, I have never once seen a person, despite hundreds trying it, make it work. And there's a reason why. There's a number of reasons why. The deck is stacked against you. And one of them you'll know, and one of them I'm revealing for the first time today. The first thing is, let me just describe the experience for you. And I have seen this pattern repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. So they're pumped, they're excited, they've saved up enough money, they know, you know what, I can live for 12 months with my savings and I'm going to make this business happen. Woo! I'm huge. The first massive mistake is that they actually don't know what they're going to do. They just know, I want to make a success with an online business. I want to create a magazine. I want to create a website. I want to create a business of some kind. First mistake. But let's ignore that for 1 second. Okay. So the first couple of months, first 3-4 months, they've never had a better time in their lives. Never had a better time in their lives. They get to watch all the webinars. They get to see everything that Ed Dale puts out, and maybe other people. Can't understand why you listen to other people. No, but they listen to all the webinars. They read all the white papers. They watch all the videos. It's fantastic. They feel like they're truly part. Look at all this stuff I was missing out on while I was working for the man. This is awesome. This is fantastic. They try a few things. Maybe after 2 or 3 months, they're doing some testing, but there's no hurry. I'm getting into the lifestyle. I'm understanding and, figuring out what my regular coffee place is. I'm doing all these great things. Everything's great. The first, oh shit moment happens at about 5 months if you're doing it for a 12-month period. Because all of a sudden they go, oh, geez, we're almost halfway and I haven't done anything yet. And this is where they buckle down. This is where I get a frantic help desk. Ed, I really need help to get back on track. It happens time and time. It's like clockwork. I can set my clock by it. Because all of a sudden, they can see the fact that very shortly, there'll be less time to make something happen than they've had. It gets less and less and less. Something terrible at this point happens. So for a couple of months, they really put in. They buckle down and they really try hard to make something happen. Guess what happens? Nothing is successful, and there's a very good reason. If you try to force something to happen, it almost inevitably never does. It's one of the horrible, cruel rules of life. When you desperately, desperately, desperately need money, and I think back to the late 80s and early 90s, where I was poor as a church mouse. When I desperately wanted money, there was no money to be found. And when I had the fortunate instances to sell companies and have a lot of money, guess what? It just seemed everything I seemed to touch turned to making more money. There's a reason, there's a fundamental reason behind all of this. An absolute fundamental reason behind all of this. And that is that your brain can't see the opportunities. It can't be creative. It can't be any of these things when you are under stress. In fact, some of you may be familiar with Maslow's pyramid. You probably all studied it at high school like I did. If you can't be certain of a roof over your head and food on the table and mortgage covered, you can't hope to start a successful business. I'm sorry. And this is on the basis of watching thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses try to start a business online. I get letters and they're heartbreaking. And they say, Ed, I've got 30 days before my mortgage closes. What can I do? What can I do to make money? And I try to be as helpful as I can. But the reality is when you're under that much stress, you're not gonna make money to do it. There may be a great inspirational story that, but that's one person in 1,000. It's the exception that proves the rule. That's what happens here, folks. That's the reality of it. And indeed, what I advise people in that situation is, look, forget starting a business. Get your house in order. Take a job. Get paid to train. One of the best things that I did in mentoring was when I found people in the challenge and elsewhere where they were really struggling financially. I said, look, talk to your creditors, talk to the people you owe money to, come up with a deal and take a damn job. Become the freelancer, become the person who's link building, become the person who's writing article, get paid $10 an hour to do that, get your house settled, get paid to train and come back from it. And that is successful. That is totally successful. Huge learning. But the biggest thing is this next point. 93%. This is huge. And this is so intellectually confronting to me initially that I thought this can't be right. This is completely wrong. I thought it was ridiculous. Anyway, a Stanford study, and I was trying to find the exact study, and I'll put up a link for that because it's just so fascinating. Studied over 3,500 startups that had become successful. Okay, so they were startups that didn't fail, quite the opposite. Startups that had success. And he asked a simple question. Was it the idea that you started doing, was the idea that you started your startup with the idea that made you successful? Guess what? 93%. 93% of people answered that no. The thing that made us successful was not the thing we started with. And I read this and I thought, that is extraordinary. That's got to be rubbish. And then I stopped and I thought, hang on a second, Ed. Let's just look back at your own life. And every single thing that I've been successful, the businesses I've sold, the things I've created, not one of them was the thing I started out with. When I stopped for a second and looked at this, I was blown away. I was floored. And all of a sudden, a bunch of things fell into place, which just absolutely showed me this transition problem. They're staring me smack in front of the face. For example, 30DC Inc., which is the company that I listed in the United States. The original idea behind 30DC Inc. was to list and trade publicly so that we could buy a bunch of businesses and with great cash flows that fly under the radar. That was the way we started. That was our idea. That was our plan. And we had this very successful challenge and immediate edge and all of these sorts of things. Then Dan Rain and I went to San Francisco in June of 2011. It's not what you think. Was there for WWDC. Easy. And although he does look very nice in a pink thong, you've got to say. You know, he really does work well with a pink thong. Dan and I saw Apple launch their new operating system with a new thing called Newsstand. And we saw Magcasts for the first time. And we didn't see Mac, it instantly came to us. This is an incredible opportunity for anybody who's in information marketing. But did we stop everything in June of 2011 and say, nah, that's it. We've got it. This is brilliant. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. And the reason, and if only I'd read this book before I'd figured all this out, I wouldn't have done all this by accident. Clay Christian's magnificent book, How Will You Measure Your Life? I would have realized that what we were seeing was the difference between deliberate and emerging strategies. Wow, there's a mouthful, right? It could be roughly translated in Ed Dale Beechworth speak to the thing that you start out with is not the thing that you're going to be successful with. A mere 7%, 7 out of 100 people have that happen. And I absolutely, the challenge absolutely bears that out. You know, all that data that we've had from the challenge absolutely bears this out. But we didn't drop everything. We didn't burn the ships in another way, which is to, we're going to pivot on a dime and do this. No, there were so many things that we had to do to figure out if this would be something that we'd be interested in. So let's go back to the mind map for a sec. Here's this rule. You have to be in action or movement or apply energy, or the thing that will actually work for you, the thing that will be your success, won't emerge. You have to be, this is the law of physics. If a thing's sitting still with no force being applied to it, it's not going to change direction. And if we now know that by definition, 93 times out of 100, you're going to change direction before the thing that you have works. Okay, if that's a law, then we have to be in movement. We have to be doing something, physically doing something to move, to do something. And when I thought about this, when I saw this and I drew this together, I thought, hang on, this happens everywhere. This absolutely happens everywhere. Copywriting. You know, the great Gary Halbert, what would he do? He'd write out cards and cards of bullets and wow facts. He would never start with a headline. He'd never start with the hook. He wouldn't have a clue what the incredible hook, the one-legged golfer. He never had a clue about what would happen with any of that. He just started writing bullets. He applied force. He applied energy. He applied action. Books. Look at Stephen King. Stephen King starts off with a sentence. And that sentence is, what if a dog went crazy and started killing people? What if a car went crazy and started killing people? What would happen if there was a massive plague that killed everybody? Are you seeing a theme here? That's what he started. You know, did you think he had the intricacies of The Stand, his magnum opus, his most magnificent book? which has this incredible hook and arcs of the battle of light and dark, right and wrong. These amazing things. No, that book started out with what would happen if a plague killed most of the people on Earth. That was it. That's how he started. Sarah McLachlan, the great Canadian musician, goes into her studio every day for 30 minutes, hits record, and starts playing. Because she knows that by having that process and practice, that there may be 5 seconds, there may be one bar of something that becomes a hook, which becomes her next song. Picasso walked into the studio every single day and started working on something. When he started sculpting, he didn't know, really. He had some vague concept of where he would go. And it was by working in it that he did that. You have to be able to take action and do that and have that process. And when I hear myself saying the words taking action, I don't know about you guys, but it really makes me want to vomit a little. I hate that. Take action. Yeah, go on. Take action. Yeah, this is fantastic. Go for it. Go and take action. You know, like some sort of coach or something. I hope you're starting to see where this is going, because I've realized that taking action needs a plan. If you're working full time, great, take action, fantastic. But if we've already determined that most of the things that you need to do to take action are repetitive and boring and will kill your soul and will force you, not your fault, your brain will do anything to save you because you're not wired that way, and they will distract you with this new thing, this new fantastic thing, you know, this new interesting thing. Then what happens? We know fundamentally that every business has a time when it's repetitive. Seth Godin calls it the dip. You know, when everything seems to be more attractive than what you're doing. Yet we know that to possibly have any business that is successful has made it through that dip into the other side. So how can you do this? How can we apply game theory? How can we apply all of these things which I've talked about here to make this work? And most importantly, how do we know if the thing that we think grass is greener on the other side is a distraction? How do we know? If we know by definition 93 times out of 100 the thing that we're starting out with is not the thing we're going to be successful with, but by doing it, now most people right there would stop and think, because here's the thing I found in 3 years of mentoring and 7 years of the challenge. Guess what? The idea that makes you succeed, you're not wandering around one day and the clouds part and you have this road to Damascus type experience and you hear the hallelujah chorus happening and some angels float down and they provide you a tablet with, here, Ed, here is the niche that you're going to be successful with. That's not what happens. It never happens. The only way you get the idea of what you're going to be doing is by action, physically moving forward. And if we're an entrepreneur, we have to take actions which keep us intellectually engaged, make it fun, make it a challenge, make it stretch. Now, before I move on to this next section, I just want to talk about, well, Ed, how do you know if something is an emerging opportunity? Well, guess what? Fortunately, it's very simple, and it's a very powerful question. What has to prove true for this to work? So many people do financial projections and they make the numbers look good to convince themselves that this is going to be something that's worth doing and that their bosses will approve it, or that you will intellectually approve that, yeah, will work. But if you actually ask yourself, what has to prove true for this to work, changes the game completely. Because you now have to make a series of assumptions. Well, for this Magcast to work, what does it need to happen? For me to get into local business consultancy, what has to happen? What are the assumptions? And then you list all these assumptions down and you rank them by importance and your certainty level. Highest uncertain to certain. important to not important. So you put the most important and uncertain at the top of your list, and the least important and most certain at the bottom of your list. Little typo there, at the bottom of your list. We take those top assumptions and then we ask ourselves this question: how can we test the assumptions quickly and cheaply? This is how you figure out whether something... You don't burn the ships and turn the entire ship around. Look what we did with Magcast. One of my mentoring students at the time, and now business partner, John Bass, heard me talking about Magcast and the ideas around Magcast, and he said, "Ed, I think I can build that for you." And that was great because we didn't have the resources at the time. We had all our internal programming resources were dedicated to doing other things at the time with regards to our strategy. And so he offered to do that and do it as a joint venture, and we'd see how it goes. And so for us, we were able to test that quickly and cheaply because John Bass has an incredible gun team of programmers, and they're really, really good, and they know how to do things. And so we tested the concept to see if it would work. By February of that year, we had a couple of prototypes that we were able to test. We then got some other people, like somebody who I'm about to bring on the webinar, and got them to test these assumptions because we knew that they could test it quickly. And this is how we made it work. And that's how we did things. So how do we do this? You are somebody who is working full-time for the man, or you're in your own small business, but it's not what you want to be doing. How do we make that transition? And with this, I want to bring in somebody who's been sitting there very patiently while I've been going on this diatribe, and that is Pete Williams. I didn't know you played Prison Blues, Pete, but I was very impressed to see this this thing. Mate, you haven't heard me go on this diatribe before because this is something I've been working on for a few months. Yep. Can I get some initial reactions from you about this?
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I've obviously heard you speak quite a bit over time, particularly about the whole going pro side of stuff and treating your online business like a real business and having to actually act like a pro. So I completely agree with you with that one. And obviously just, the journey you have to go through to sort of go from that, full-time employee type basis with like a hobby business on the side to make that transition to go full-time. You definitely have to, challenge some assumptions and push hard and be pro at that and do the pro things, do what a pro business owner does so you can make that transition successfully and not hit that 5-month wall that you kind of talked about before.
Yeah, and I've fought so hard against this because I employed 150 people on 3 continents, right? And it was miserable. I was miserable. I was on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, dealing with people's politics and rubbish, and so often it seemed like things away from the core business.
Essentially, you're running a babysitting business.
It was very much the case. and so what I loved about the online promise was that I would never have to deal with anybody ever again. I love that concept, and unfortunately I see that concept still sold around the place. And it was at the magnificent Heathrow Hotel. You and I were completely
magnificent Heathrow Hotel's a friendly way of saying it.
With that amazing vista. It did have a Starbucks in the foyer, and I've got props for having a Starbucks in the foyer and opening at 5 a.m. in the morning. You and I were sitting there, and I was always amazed by your output and product, and it seemed like you didn't have a team per se, but you had this amazing product, right? And you were able to produce things so quickly. That to me was fascinating, and I was very interested I just sat you down and said, how do you do this? And you started to lay out to me how you operate, the way you work, which had nothing to do with a particular tactic, but the way you were able to apply that to whatever cool thing you saw, and be able to apply that. And I thought, this is amazing. This is incredible. And I said, you've got to tell people about this. This is something that you need to tell people about. And what did you tell me that day?
Oh, a lot of things, I think. So basically, like to me, can I answer with a bit of a story, not exactly what I told
Sure.
you? I
Yep.
think, and it kind of ties in perfectly well to your kind of an analogy of going pro. And I think this will kind of segue nicely in that the thing people do, I find very strange, is if you're going to go and open a retail store in the real world, not online, in the real world, are you going to go and learn how to do carpentry and buy some timber and learn how to actually do the shop fit out yourself? Of course you wouldn't. If
No.
you're going to go and would you go and learn how to do graphic design and printing so you can do the facade of the building? Of course you wouldn't. What would you actually do? You'd focus on the core things that actually drive revenue. And for a retail store, it's obviously marketing and actually the delivery of good products. Whereas when people suddenly go online, they make this transition online, that pro approach to building an offline business goes out the window, and they start focusing on what I term the mechanical sort of stuff. So you go online and you start learning how to actually install WordPress and set up a hosting account and do that sort of stuff, which is the equivalent, the online equivalent of doing the carpentry and set out and shop fitting of a retail store. You spend time learning how to do some design work or HTML and all this mechanical sort of stuff, which is, for example, the equivalent of doing the sign writing. And you kind of, when you go online, people get this focused, this misdirected focus almost towards this sort of mechanical aspect and not focusing on the actual core value that you add in the business. And that's where what we spoke about that morning was I just focus on the core inputs that actually add the value and not the mechanical stuff where I don't add any value. So I worry about what I can do, what I can add value to as the idea guy, as the entrepreneur, as the information marketer, and then let a team or tools and systems do the mechanical stuff that I don't add value to, and that's where I get huge leverage.
Absolutely. And to me, the thing where this mixes in with everything that I've just been saying for the last few minutes is that what I realized with mentoring stuff was I realized that in terms of people making this transition, that the secret was them to use these leverage techniques which you showed, which are fun because when you're managing people and when you're managing somebody, the trouble is with the outsourcing, it really is a big issue, right? It's really an incredibly big issue to think about, hey, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And they don't have a platform. It's all people say, oh, it's outsourcing. Outsourcing's not the answer.
Not at all.
It's a means to an end. If you don't know what to outsource, if you don't know how to manage that, if you don't know that outsourcing is a piece of the puzzle that people need. And so what I did was I had my mentoring students watch every single minute of that presentation that you gave at our Melbourne conference all those years ago.
Yep.
About how to use teams and how to use people as a way to keep your interest. So it's very easy to come home and spend an hour doing the types of things that you show people how to do. It's
Yep.
fun. That's simple. It's like Farmville, right? It's awesome. It's like you're playing a game because you're not doing the repetitive stuff yourself. So Pete, give us three things you think people should be doing, that they could be doing, that demonstrate the types of things that you're talking about that they usually don't do. Give us three.
Sure. Well, the first one is a system I use to actually create content. 'Cause for a lot of people, I think, obviously, as you spoke about before, traffic is key to grow an online business, and the fuel for that traffic is good content that actually gets spread out there across the web. So without producing regular, consistent basis, you're not going to be getting any sort of links back or any sort of traffic. That's a given these days. You can't
Amen.
spam the search engines and stuff like that anymore. You have to be high quality content. And I think a big battle for a lot of people is, as you said, they come home from the office at the end of the day and they sit down at the computer and try to punch out a blog post. And it's so hard. They're not creative. It's very hard. It's very technical. Or they try and create a video. They try and produce some slides and record a video to it that they can actually put up on YouTube and get some traffic or whatever it might be. And for so many people, that's really hard. It's very overwhelming. It's not enjoyable. And what we sort of look at doing is breaking down, going, okay, hang on. If you think about the video, like maybe take a moment and think about a video that you've watched recently that sort of added huge value to your business and that helped you grow and get education. Well, was it really the slides that were the value there? Was it the font face or the transition chosen? And realistically, when you look at it, well, not really. Like that doesn't really add much value to the end of the day. What your audience take away from the video, or what you've taken away from a video you've consumed recently. So looking at that, you go, okay, hang on, where is the value? Well, the value is in obviously your voice, your message, your articulation of the issue, the solution, whatever it might be. So what we suggest is we actually say, okay, hang on, when you want to create content, let's look at just doing the core inputs. So for example, take a mind map. Draw up a mind map similar to exactly what you showed before on the screen, Ed, just a mind map of the content and the flow of the content. And then just hitting record on your computer. Whether you use your iPhone as your microphone, or you've got a built-in microphone on your computer, or even you've got a really stealthy, cool microphone. It doesn't matter. The tech does not matter. And then just talk your way through that mind map. Just articulate your thoughts and your suggestions and your plan of attack through that mind map, because that's the core element. And then actually use outsourcers, out-task as a team to actually create the slides in the video after the fact, because that's the mechanical stuff. And that's what causes a lot of people to actually not produce the video, because they try and do the slides up front and spend hours trying to pick the right graphics and hours trying to pick the right stock photos and all that sort of stuff. And there's no value there. Just get your idea down on mind map, record the audio, and then have a very, very manageable process of getting that audio matched to slides that are created by somebody off the actual mind map you created. So the bullet points and the arms of your mind map become the core structure of your actual video slides, and then have someone else match it together for you very efficiently, very effectively, and very cheaply. And that's how you can produce content. You produce a video every single day like this. You come home from work, spend 10 minutes mind mapping out the idea for the piece of content, 15 minutes of yourself talking through that audio, hand it to somebody, and then you have a video up on YouTube by the time you get out of bed the next morning. And imagine what would happen to your business if you're doing that every single day, producing that one core piece of content every single day.
Absolutely. And that, to me, people saw me during this presentation. I put, my entire, I create the mind map first, because it's a very easy way of doing it. I do it to a timer, so that, because I know that your mind is most creative, get this, because this is so counterintuitive, to when it's constrained.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest problem a lot of my mentoring students had was that there was a world of opportunities there. It seemed every single day there was something that was unique. And the thing that I love about what you're doing, Pete, is this is fundamental. This is absolutely fundamental to everything that you're doing. It doesn't matter about the system. It doesn't matter about whether you're doing magcasts or you're doing, local business consulting, you're doing Kindle books. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is. This underlying stuff that you teach is fundamental. And I would really heartily recommend, you've done a course on all of this, which I've got a URL there on the screen, eddale.co/profit hacks. And guys, I really encourage you to have a look at this course, because it's just a brilliant system, and to me it's like the operating system for being an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter what cool thing, you've got a deliberate strategy. You've chosen that you are going to create a website, like so many people that we've taught, particularly recently. Most people that bought Magcast, for example, they were people who had websites in areas, and the areas I'm most proud of were the people in the health and fitness and new age areas. Here's why I'm proud of them, is because, my goodness, every year in the challenge we warn people away from those niches online. Why do we warn people away from those niches online? Well, it's very simple. It's very, very simple. They're bloody hard. The work and effort and energy you have to put on to a website to make it successful, we're talking a multi-year commitment and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or a major book deal, or you're lucky enough to be a TV person. You're a market leader, if you will, already, and you're just transitioning online. For Joe and Jane Smith, to make a dent. And of course, most people who are involved in health, fitness, new age, mind and body, they're incredibly passionate about what they were doing. And bless them, they worked every day to produce something, and they were just not getting the audience. They're not getting the traffic.
Hmm.
Then Magcast comes along, an emergent strategy, something that they weren't anticipating, something that they weren't expecting. But they looked at it, and they looked at it from the perspective of, well, this is hey, it's money back guarantee. I've seen what Ed's done before. He seems to be pretty psychopathically excited about this stuff. I'll give it a try. And they gave it a try. And as of last week, 10 of the top 12 magazines in mind, spirit, health and body, the most contested area of the App Store, were my students' Magcasts. But they could only do that because they were able to be given a underlying system. And the system that we utilize was inspired by what you taught me initially at Heathrow, and then, of course, over the, I've been very lucky, of course, that we live in the same town, which is fantastic. You probably notice on the messaging there, we've got some questions coming through too. So I'd like to take some of these questions from people as well. But boy, if you found that the transition from being full-time to doing your own thing never seems to work, I hope you go back and listen and re-listen to this webinar, because the reason, it's not your fault. It is not your fault. You've never been given the understanding of how your brain works. And all of this stuff is new because the neurologists haven't been able to figure out what's been going on in your brain without you suffering a really severe head trauma, which, funnily enough, they don't get a lot of volunteers for that. So now they can scan and they can see what's going on, and it's fascinating. So let's have a look here at some of these questions.
Well, can I say one quick thing before we jump into that for a second, Ed?
Yes, please.
I was going to give one other quick example, just to sort of, you asked me for 3 and I've given you 1 so far, so let's compromise at 2. I just wanted to suggest to people as well, is you think about obviously that kind of mind map to audio scenario that gives you a video, and like that's fantastic. Yeah, you can produce a video every day, which is awesome. But then you're only getting traffic from YouTube, which YouTube traffic is huge. You can make some significant money and significant income from the traffic you generate from YouTube. But then, what about obviously blogging? People have been told to blog. You got to blog every day, or blog every week, or whatever it might be, or you got to be doing podcasting and stuff like that. And that's, I think, for a lot of people, where they struggle is they come home from work and they've got to think, okay, today I've got to do a blog post. Come home from work tomorrow, I've got to record a podcast. Come home on Wednesday and it's like, oh, I've got to do a video, and it can get completely overwhelming. And it's very hard to get that creativity happening at the end of the day when you're doing all that sort of stuff. But if you think about it, you've already created on Monday a mind map and an audio that is a video. Well, can't you get that transcribed and edited up by an editor who's much, much cheaper than a ghostwriter? And then that core piece of content you created on Monday in 25 minutes become a blog post for you that week. Because you have to realize this, and this is something that people don't really understand, is that the people who will stumble across and find your content on YouTube won't be the same people that come to your blog. And they won't be the same people that listen to iTunes. They're going to be a different part of your segment, a different part of your niche, a different part of your audience. So by taking that one message you create in 25 minutes or 30 minutes on a Monday and have a process and a system to turn that, repurpose that core piece of content into other platforms, other mediums, other modalities, which is the big thing that you and I spoke about at Heathrow that morning, that's where you start getting heaps of leverage and really go pro and be able to grow your business in a part-time sort of manner, because you're getting maximum leverage out of all the inputs you're doing and really getting the value there. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't really think about, is they really get overwhelmed and struggle with the fact they've got to come up with an idea for a content piece on Monday for a blog post, and then come up with a completely different idea and struggle through the process of recording a podcast on Tuesday, and then come up with a third idea that week for another piece of content that's engaging and figure out how to do a YouTube video. And that's sort of the real hard part for a lot of amateurs and people who aren't implementing businesses like this and going pro.
My process is very simple. I'm doing National Writers Month at the moment,
Yep.
which for long-term watchers know that National Writers Month was actually what inspired the original 30-day challenge, which
Hmm.
is where a bunch of psychopaths in the month of November uh, decide to sit down and bang out a novel in 50,000, 50,000 words in the 30 days of November. Um, and I'm doing it this year, and I'm going to, I think, be successful for the first time.
Awesome.
And the reason I'm successful is because I'm cheating. The way I am cheating is that one of the big problems is that I just can't type. I just missed out on, I'm just old enough to have not had the keyboard training when I was younger. I look at guys like Eugene Ware who terrify me. They can type like 100 words a minute. They're freaks. And which means that they can get their ideas down as fast as they can talk, right? And I can't do that. And I wager the majority of people who are on this call tonight are in the same bracket. Well, I cheat. I use Drag and Dictate. And indeed, what Drag and Dictate has done is that they've released an app for the iPhone. And what you do is you record into that app, it records it, and then you upload that into Drag and Dictate. So you can be anywhere with your iPhone and dictate as you think about it, as you feel like it. And then Drag and Dictate does the transcription for you. And it's pretty bloody good. The latest version 3, which is on the Mac, it works. It really works. So in 50 minutes, I can bang out 3,400 words of my novel. And
In how many minutes?
in 50 minutes,
That's awesome.
I can do 3,400 words, and consistently. I've been doing consistently 3,400 words in 50 minutes. Because I can talk, as people have probably figured out by now. So I'll let you think of your third piece of advice. We've had requests for your third piece.
I'm ready, man.
Third
I've got
piece
it.
of advice. Good. Let's hit with your third piece of advice.
Well, the third piece of advice is just a continuation of this repurposing thing. And I think a lot of people, the way they've kind of been, I guess, sold internet marketing, this is what I love about Madcast, and I'll kind of talk about that in a moment, because what people are doing, and historically have done primarily, is they've spent all this effort churning out an ebook, hypothetically, or some sort of course they're going to sell. And what they've done is they've done all this effort to create this course, and then they're selling it on their own website, which is great. And they're spending all this effort trying to drive traffic to that website, which is fine, and that is definitely a great way to build a business. But isn't there people all day, every day, going to Amazon with a credit card in hand, wanting to buy books? Well, that's why Kindle's been fantastic in taking that ebook you've got over there and selling it on Kindle. Well, aren't people also going to Amazon and iTunes and Audible every single day to actually buy audiobooks? Well, of course they are. So why aren't you right now, before you go and create that next product, before you go and actually try and spend effort driving traffic to your sales page for your current ebook, why aren't you repurposing the content you've already created and make an audiobook? Or have that course selling on Udemy or AppSumo, iTunes, Audible, Nook, all these platforms, because the issue is you're trying to do two things. You're trying to actually grow up a great racehorse who's going to win the race, but then also try and build the race course and get people to your race course all at once. Like if you had a racehorse, which is your ebook, a great piece of content, a great horse that can win races, why aren't you taking that to race courses and events that already exist, that already have hundreds of thousands of people going to them every single day? And then that's where you're going to make the most money. Yeah, long term, the person who owns the race course makes significantly more money than the race horse owner on average. But to start out, you've got to take that racehorse where the races are, and that is Kindle. And that's what I love about Madcast, is that people every day, as you say, are going to iTunes and Newsstand every single day with their credit card in hand, looking to purchase a magazine. So why aren't you getting? So your magazine's there in front of those people. You're making sales. Yes, you could create, and this is what the problem was historically, is that people were creating magazines for the iPad, but they had to actually have a website on the internet and drive traffic to that site to sell them on the idea of the magazine, and then get them to go to the App Store and buy the magazine that way. But now with Newsstand, people are going there every day wanting to buy a magazine. So that's why you're seeing huge results. Why you've got 10 out of 12 health magazine people being in the top 10 with Madcast is because your platform is so great, it's so much leverage, but you're selling to a platform of people who already want to buy. There's plenty of magazines out there. If you tried to create a magazine or an ebook or whatever it might be and sell it on a website and drive traffic to that, you are never going to succeed. But you're succeeding because you're going to a platform that already exists. And I think so many online marketers, the way they've been sold to do online marketing, or things haven't been transitioned quick enough for them in their education, is that you should leverage your time and create content like I spoke about before. Leverage that content for traffic in different modalities, but also, more importantly, leverage the products you've got before you create the next one. And just don't think my ebook's not great, it's not selling. Go and actually take it where people want to buy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's my last little rant.
No, it's such a good point, and I was just reading through some of the questions, and John Messer was saying, if you don't build an audience, doesn't matter what course you have, it doesn't matter what strategy you have, you're going to struggle, and building that audience, that tribe, if you use Seth Godin's methodology. I think you've got your face like 4 times on the inside front cover of that book.
I do.
Very impressive. That's a phenomenal book, and it really has, since the day it came out, formed my thinking in terms of this whole concept of market leadership, because all these cool opportunities that come down the pipe, magcasting, Kindle books, local business consulting, whatever it happens to be, they are awesome opportunities, but if you have the underlying tribe to apply those opportunities to, it's very hard to fail. And what I love about what Profit Hacks does is that it shows you how to do that in a way that you can come home from work, you can spend your half an hour to an hour, and you can do it in a way that doesn't kill you. Because I don't know about you guys, I love doing mind maps, particularly on the iPad. Oh, I love. And on the iPad mini now, even more. It's just fantastic. Like, that's fun for me. That's like a game, because it's like getting down my thoughts on paper and then understanding that, well, you guys saw me. I did a haiku deck, which is also on the iPad. I created on the iPad mini. That's the beautiful images that you're seeing in this presentation, right? All done on the iPad. And that's one piece of content. Then we have the webinar, and we can talk about it and go through it another way. We'll get the webinar transcribed. We'll record it and mail it out to people. That's how you build audience, because in this day, when attention is so precious, it's such a big part of this. All right, mate, we better answer some of these questions.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. So Tina says, actually, hey, Pete and Ed, I just want to say I'm starting to use Pete's tips from this past week or so. Just sent my second audio email, Pete. Thanks.
Awesome. Very cool.
People love my audio email. Pete, describe, what do you mean by audio email? Talk to us about that.
The stuff we talk about in Profit Hacks and the stuff I've been talking about is more than just obviously creating content and generating traffic and leverage. I think that's a big core and a big issue for a lot of people. But for other people, like just consumption and communication is a big time suck for a lot of people. They come home from the office and they've got 90 million emails to get through or whatever it might be. And what I actually do, and it's something that I think I might have learned a lot of it from you, and we've been speaking about it quite a bit, is I do audio emails. So rather than actually replying to people with like long, misspelt, bad grammar writing, I'm a child, a little bit different to you. I'm a child of Bill Gates, and grew up with word and spell check, so kind of don't spell because of that. What I've actually done is I reply to audio. I reply to emails with audio. I just record a very quick audio response using some software on my computer and attach that to my email, and use another software tool called Text Expander that allows me to actually create a couple of paragraphs of text that says, hey, thanks for your email. I'll reply with an audio. It's attached. Love to hear back from you soon. And I just attach my audio file. It's much quicker. It's more engaging. People hear my voice, hear my tonality. It's more personal. And it actually saves me time, but actually gets me better results. That's just a really quick hack to actually communicate people in audio. It seems to work exceptionally well and saves me a heck of a lot of time.
Yeah, it's a great thing, and I know because again, you can't thumb type as quick as you can talk, and this is pretty much every smartphone on the planet has some little thing that allows you to record something and email it.
Yep.
And it's an incredible time saver. Works brilliantly.
Yeah, say it, mail it on the iPhone is brilliant.
And you can get some color and flavor into the audio that you may not be able to get in the email, as some of my colleagues sitting on this webinar would attest to. Because I usually sing. I try to do my audio emails to One Direction tunes. It's just something that I try just to entertain. Yeah, it really improves productivity, I find. Um, Gilbert says here, what would you do if you'd be able to pull out 50K from your online business? 20 goes to expenses, the rest takes taxman, and the rest does not make you rich. Gilbert, you're looking at this the wrong way, fella. It's, you know, that's completely the wrong way to look at starting a business. You want to start a business for it. The reason you start a business, or indeed the reason you work, is to ultimately pay the bills and B, get ahead and do the things you want to do in your life. That's the game plan, right? And so, if, I get used to, particularly in the old days, I get lots of questions, which of course I can never answer because I'm not qualified to do so. Well, what about the tax issues? How much tax am I going to have to pay for all of this? Well, you know what? Pay the tax, for goodness sake. If you pay $300,000 in tax, like somebody I know, that means you're making a hell of a lot more than that. And so you should be thrilled about it, that you're doing it. But understand, your deliberate strategy for a lot of people listening to this call, your deliberate strategy is that you know that you don't want to be doing what you're doing currently. You really want to be in charge of your own destiny. You want to create a business that you're in control of, you're in charge of. Hopefully you build it in such a way that you put in less hours than the reward and effort that you get. In other words, you're not working for $10 an hour, you're leveraging, and which is, of course, what Profit Hacks is all about. And so, that's the way to look at it, Gilbert, is to look at things that way and plan things that way. Because I guarantee you, if you're looking at it, the mindset of what you're giving away, how many expenses you're paying and how much tax you're paying, then you'll never get ahead. You just won't, because it's, that classic, when you do advanced driving courses, they deliberately put you into a spin. And this is phenomenal. I don't know if you've ever tried, and it's the same when you're skiing or when you're ice skating. The big mistake people make is that they look where they don't want to go. They look at the cliff, they look at the ice skating rink wall, they look at the wall of the racetrack. Professional drivers, skaters, and skiers know that if you want to avoid that object, if you want to avoid that tree, you have to look to where you want to go. It's a sight, and your body will follow. That's what happens with ice skating. It's what happens with skiing. And it's cool, very cool how that works. And it happens in business too. It absolutely works in business as well. Okay. Larkland asks, where's a good source for quality virtual assistants?
That's a great question. I think there's plenty of sources, and I think it comes down to what you need it for. So I think that the biggest thing is what you need to know is exactly what you're hiring for, and have systems and
How to
swipe and
manage
deploy.
them.
Yeah, how to manage them, where to go
What
to
they
manage
should
them,
do.
and what they should do. So I think there's obviously Elance and Odesk are two great resources for out tasks. So one-off tasks, I think they're fantastic for that. Fiverr is brilliant for transcription work, video work, syndication sort of stuff. Super cheap people on there, very, very good. But I prefer to actually go to places that normal people in that country actually go for jobs. If you're going to hire someone full-time, go to like the Yahoo Jobs or Monster.com or Seek.com.au equivalent of the country you're going to hire in, because from that perspective, what you do is you're actually hiring someone who's got the mentality of a full-time employee and hasn't been quote-unquote jaded by people in the internet marketing space who've kind of used them and abused them, which kind of does happen a little bit on Elance and Odesk.
Yeah,
So
badly.
you find people great for projects on Elance and Odesk, but you very rarely find someone who can be a long-term employee, because they feel like they've got to protect their own interest. And historically, they've been told, oh, there's plenty of work coming down the line, and never happens. So they've always got that next project in the bag, which makes it hard for you to actually, if you're being ethical and doing the right thing, trying to find a full-timer. So those sort of local resources in each country is by far the best way to do it. And then you need to know exactly, okay, what is the process I'm going to implement? How am I going to roll this out? Because for so many people, what they do is they'll hire someone, as you kind of said before, Ed, and they'll have enough work for them for 30 hours, and then it's like, well, hang on, what am I going to make them do next? And it just doesn't work out well. So you need to have a repeatable system and process that you can rely on every single week to say, hey, this is the type of output I want, this is the input I'm going to do, and here is the specs, here is the job description, here is the process, here is the steps to follow to make this what I want it to make, and just have that already, this resource library for your team members to go to and use. And that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, does Profit Hacks sort of do that? And is that part of, what does it have? Does it have like checklists, or how do you handle that inside Profit
Yeah,
Hacks?
there's quite a few different things. Like I did a whole outsourcing seminar not that long ago. So that entire seminar is inside the program as just one section of one of the modules. So it goes through
Yeah.
everything from hiring, recruiting, training, maintaining, all that sort of stuff, which is really important. And we've sold that for $500, or more than $500 actually, by itself before, and we've got huge value from that. But the
Yeah,
really cool thing with
I can really thoroughly endorse that, because both you and David
yep.
Jennings are guys that really know how to build a team, like,
Mm.
and do it really, really well.
But like, the really cool thing that I'm really proud of, that this is the funny thing, is it wasn't planned to be in Profit Hacks originally when we first rolled this out earlier this year to two internal private launches. But the people, the hundreds of people who went through it have given us great feedback, and we've built some extra stuff into the program. And one of these things is, for example, to sort of use the example we gave before of, taking a mind map, recording an audio to it, and having that turned into a video, then having that audio turned into a podcast, having that audio turn into an article that can be a blog post, having that audio turn into an article that be a guest post, all those different processes that you want to have to leverage your time so you only do one input. What we've done is we've gone out and actually written the exact job advert that I use for when I hire my team members to do these sort of tasks, that you can just literally swipe and deploy, copy and paste directly into places like Elance or Odesk. And then once you hire the person using the processes and stuff that we teach you and talk about in the outsourcing section of one of the modules, you then also get the job spec. So it's literally, here is the job spec, the PDF document that you send to the person you've hired along with that original raw audio file, and say, just do what's in the PDF. So we've really tried to break it down so people don't even have to think. They just know what they're trying to achieve. They do whatever it might be, and there's so many other different processes beyond just creating a mind map and creating content off the back of that. There's obviously doing interviews and how to actually find guests. And here's the actual job map for your outsourced team member to use to get guests for you on a podcast or an interview series. Here's the actual email that I use every single week, my team use every single week to get guests for my podcast and my blog, which has audios and interviews happening every single week. It's the exact same email I use. So you have all that sort of stuff in every different process. So you can literally go into it, work out what you want to do of this program this week, or whatever it might be, what process and system you want to use, and you've got the video telling you why you want to do it and how to do it. But then there's the actual, real copy and paste material that people can actually use to make this happen without having to think, which is really cool. And the feedback from that has been really, really awesome.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Donna asks here, is there a drag and drop tool to convert audio to type words on Windows? The gold standard, and this is not something you'll hear me say very, very often, but drag and dictate on the PC is actually even better than drag and dictate on the Mac.
Yep.
It so hurts me to say that. And it will do exactly that. It'll take your recorded it'll take any sort of WAV file, MP3, MP4, AIFF, all these fancy pants words which you don't really need to understand, except for the fact that you can buy all sorts of tools for your smartphone that'll let you record it, and you can drag it in, and it'll just churn away and transcribe. So it's absolutely something that you can do there. It's interesting. Gene says here, I've tried to find others to sell my art and find only art reps who'll tell you more of the same thing that I don't want to do anymore. Do art fairs, go to openings, etc. What can I do as an artist? I've got some thoughts, Pete, but how does the leveraging, because people often associate the creative arts with not really business principles not applying.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think, I'll probably say something that will upset a lot of artists first and foremost, is go straight for the actual print market. There's plenty of websites online to sort of use this analogy to sort of give some, hopefully open some ideas and some windows to think through. Is like, well, you create your core piece of art, why not actually then make a print of that and have that available and sell that on all the different art print websites out there that are getting traffic and doing the marketing themselves? So you become like a wholesaler almost to those platforms. That's sort of one super leveraged way to kind of change your business model a little bit that might offend some artists who like to make one-off originals, and I understand that, that's fine. But things like, well, if you're creating this, you should have a website selling your art. And why aren't you creating videos of your studio tours? Doing videos of, hey, this is me, this is the process I make this art. Create a story around the piece and have that on YouTube. write a blog
Yep.
post by just doing audio. Obviously, today I did this, and doing the same sort of process, and create a story around each art piece and the creation process. And that can go out on, you could easily have a podcast every single week where you interview great other artists about their creative process, and their, or art historians or art critics. You can, interview every single week, and that builds up your reputation as a expert, as a market leader, as a maven, that will obviously drive lots of traffic back to your art store to buy that art. You can do, obviously, your blog, which we spoke about. You can do videos. You can easily shoot on your iPhone, very, very ghetto, relaxed videos. We kind of talk a lot about that, to actually then just create something that you can go out to YouTube every single day showing the progress of an art piece and get people built into that story and the emotional attachment to that piece as it's created. What's
Yeah,
your
I think
thoughts?
it's never been a better time to. There's never been a better time in history than to make a living with art. Now, I'm not talking, make million, bajillion, squillions. I'm talking about making a real living so that you are not having to wait tables. There's never been a better time, and there are two elements to this. One is to build your tribe, and I think Pete just gave you, chapter and verse on the sorts of things that you do to build that tribe, because involvement breeds commitment. I can think
Love
of
that
two
saying.
fabulous examples of this. Gabriel amps. He shows he creates these amazing boutique amps which are for guitars. The amplifier to make them go super loud, and he creates beautiful amps. And he was a challenger from years ago, and he realized that, hang on a second, I can just shoot videos of me making each amp and giving an update each day. And you don't think that guitar people, they go crazy for
Hmm.
these things, right? And if you're the person whose amp it is getting built, you are so excited, right? It is just like, oh, well. So for me, where the opportunities are now for customization, for personalization, for taking commissions. We're almost back to the Renaissance, where the original artists who were a huge part of they were the television and magazine industry of those times, was because they got commissions. They were commissioned to create works of art. So you get to the point where you're creating things that are either by request or customized for individuals, or because you've got a very strong vision and you've got a very strong project, you do that. Oh my goodness, Kickstarter, for goodness sake.
Yep.
Kickstarter is the best thing to happen to artists in human history. The way that you can get a project funded by people making micropayments and paying $20 or $50 or $90 to get a video made, or a photography exhibition up and running, or an art tour. Those sorts of things are amazing. Of course, they work if you've got a tribe. You need that to build up that tribe of people. Etsy, for goodness sake, marketplaces for artists where there's inbuilt and inherent traffic.
Exactly.
It's never been a better time to be an artist and actually be able to eat.
The
Which
biggest thing though
is,
is, so I was going to say, is the biggest problem that a lot of artists face is when they actually try and start doing this, and they turn their focus away from the art and then trying to get all these mechanics for actually marketing their business, and
yeah,
that's obviously a big concern. So what you need to focus on is obviously just the core things that actually help you market your business in a very efficient and leveraged way without
yeah,
taking your focus off the actual artwork itself. But that's the whole idea of doing things in a leveraged way, in a core versus mechanics way. So you focus on the core message of the story of your art and the actual design process or the creation process or the history behind the piece, and have that out on as many platforms as possible, so you do get that traffic back to your site that
yeah.
get engaged with the story and purchase from you.
You do not add any value at all creating your website,
No.
right? Building, like physically building it, or physically editing and rendering a video, or uploading it to YouTube, or transcribing. You add zero value to that process. And as I said at the start of this webinar, by doing those things, it actually kills you. And eventually you'll go do something else. It'll get to you in the end. I don't care how disciplined you are. It will get you. And when you realize that the artists that have done really, really well have teams. They have teams of people. And what's awesome about this day and age, and what Profit Hacks shows you, is that those teams of people don't have to cost a fortune. In fact, I saw a question here where somebody's thinking of hiring a designer, but I'm scared of committing $45,000 a year when I do not have $45,000 cash in my bank. Now, I want to make two observations here. The first observation is this. Do you really need a full-time designer? In this day and age, do you need a designer on staff when there are so many amazing people? Once you know how to hire people and do it the right way, when there are so many people, do you have 45,000? Like if you looked at it another way and said there's $45,000 worth of outsourced team design work that you could get done. That's question one. Now, question two is, let's assume this designer is indeed fantastic and it's absolutely somebody that you want to work with. Most people think of yearly salaries, and it's the wrong way to look at it. It's not 45,000 a year. What's 45,000 divided by 12?
You're asking me?
Hang on. What is $45,000 divided by 12?
Let me think.
Thanks, Siri. So, if we
she's slow on the math, isn't she?
She's quicker than me though. It's actually $3,750 a month. That's what you have to think about. Because if your business stops and it doesn't work out, well, then unfortunately, you have to let that person go. It sounds horrible and everything, but that's what you are thinking. It's not actually $45,000 a year. And that person, should generate you, be directly responsible for making double or triple that. That's what you need to think. Is that resource going to help you double or triple that return on investment? And so that's sort of the way that you think about it. What else do we have here? Got that. Tina says, I'm not sure. Wholly slight expletive. What a great idea! I create hand-painted silk clothing and wearable art, and I never thought of it. Yeah, it's an amazing world. For goodness sake, art markets, Square, is phenomenal now. The ability to take credit cards with a swipe on your smartphone. No fuss, no muss, no horrible merchant accounts, which artists never qualify for because they're living hand to mouth and have been for years. Bless them.
Yeah. And PayPal's about to release something as well too.
Yeah, PayPal's about to do it as well. I'd use Square. Yeah, and there's an equivalent. I think somebody's opening up an equivalent in the UK. Kickstarter, Etsy. Gosh, it's a great world. We live in an amazing time to do this. But the trouble is that there's too much stuff to be done. And the thing, and I really recommend you guys having a look at Profit Hacks, because it's the operating system for getting all this stuff done, and for you to be able to make that transition from working full-time for somebody else to being able to do it full-time yourself. Or if you're, like, for example, Jean, who's an artist, it allows you to focus on the core, the stuff that's important, and leave the mechanics to other people, and do that in an economic way, do it in a way that actually adds value and makes it fun, rather than it being a weight around your neck.
One thing I'd also say too is that all outsourcing is a big thing, and that's where you can really explode your business. But it's kind of more than an outsourcing course as well, because there's a lot of stuff we talk about. Just not only thinking about, but even show you how to do this stuff yourself. If you are, for example, someone who creates hand painted silk clothing or ebooks, whatever it might be, it's like, oh, hang on. Why don't you yourself, before you go and create the next piece of art or product, go and actually make sure that hand-designed or hand-painted clothing is actually designed and sold on all these other platforms. There's plenty of platforms out there that allow you to actually upload your T-shirt artwork, and they will sell it for you and give you a commission as an artist. So why aren't you doing Cafe Press, that sort of stuff? And there's heaps of them out there. So this is a lot of the stuff we talk about in the program, as well as thinking about, yes, you could obviously have an outsourcer to do that for you, but where is it leveraging your business, not only for you and your time by having team members, but even you and your products and your time by doing some of this stuff yourself, but just make sure you're maximizing every single thing you do in your business. And that's sort of that operating system stuff you speak about, which I love that analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, here's a great question I think to end today on, and because it goes to the absolute heart of the problem. George says, looking for advice on whether to leave my current employment, which is emotionally draining. As a parent, getting home at 10 p.m. 3 nights a week, almost 50 hours of work with a young family, working as an IT consultant, running their own business, which closed 2 years ago. Still a handful of clients remaining. Would you risk leaving to start up again? Currently studying digital media at college part-time and looking to move from server PC hardware IT support to digital media while keeping the former going to bring the bills and, well, pay the bills. Would you take the challenge and jump at it? Well, this goes to my, burn the ship strategies, which I'm not a fan of. I don't see them work. Where I see this, it's this whole concept of transition. And in my mentoring, George, the way I advise somebody just like yourself is you've got to figure out what pays the bills. You've got to meet that monthly nut, and do whatever that needs to be done. And here's the thing, it becomes less draining if you know you've got a plan B, okay? Because that gives you the excitement. You know that plan A is funding plan B. The challenge you have is having those regular periods of time, and I know I've got 3 kids. Pete's about to become a dad next year, which is pretty exciting.
So exciting,
right? But boy, is that time you never as Pete will discover very shortly. You think, what did I do with all that time when I didn't have children? Go to all the movies you can now, Pete, please. And it's so. What do you do? Here's the thing that most people don't realize. If you can spend half an hour a day religiously doing what we call CFT, critical focus time, where you are doing actions that are physically building and moving yourself towards your business, you will be amazed with what you can get done. And then you take some of that money that you're using and applies like the strategies that Pete teaches in Profit Hacks, so that you've got somebody. It happens every time with mentoring students over the past 3 years. The joy after they realize that they can be at work and realizing they've got a person or a group of people while they're working on their stuff for them. It's incredibly powerful. And so, in some ways, oftentimes I will argue with people, you know what, you should be doing more of plan A work, not less of plan A work, so that it gives you the resources to get your plan B going. That to me is the thing, because here's the other thing. Remember, and don't forget this deliberate and emergent strategy. Before you even contemplate, quitting, you have to have a deliberate strategy. You have to have something that works, because guess what? Whatever your first idea is, 93 times out of 100, that's not the idea that's going to work. But it's by doing that the great idea will happen. The thing that makes you successful will happen. So by having that discipline of blocking out half an hour a day initially, just half an hour, phone off, everything off, and you are physically pounding at the keys, or you're creating those mind maps, or you're recording those voicemail instructions, or you're reviewing those stats, or you're ringing up people for your local business consultancy, or ringing up, doing check moves to get more clients for your digital media stuff. Registering yourself on Elance so you're getting paid to do digital media projects. Registering yourself on Odesk on the other side of the fence. Because here's the cool thing. You know what? It's called paid to train. You can get people to pay you to train. Are you going to make huge money? No. Are you still working for the man? And yes, you are. But here's the good news. You're working in an area that you love, which makes a huge difference. And you're getting skills. You're training in the skills that are useful to you and where you want to go and go forward in. That to me is the best piece of advice, I can give in this situation. Register yourself on Elance. Go for jobs. Go for jobs on Odesk in digital media where you want to be. And as you start to get those gigs, and trust me, there is enormous amounts of work out there for people. I did a seminar in Phoenix recently, and across the road was this huge shopping center, and it was freaky. It was a ghost. Like, there were no tenants. It was completely shut down. I mean, the economy was just a disaster. But as I pointed out to them, and I pointed across at that thing, the economy is not bad. It's just moved. And of course, if you are working in an industry where it has moved from, then it's horrible. And my sympathies are with you. But it's not, it hasn't gone, it hasn't disappeared. It's just that there are people in all parts of the world that want your services in digital media that you couldn't have reached originally because Elance didn't exist, Odesk didn't exist, or the dozen of other places that you can register yourself to work for people. Fiverr, for goodness sake. I know people on Fiverr, which is the site that is literally $5 jobs, who are paying the bills. They're meeting their nut. They're getting because if you don't have your home environment sorted, if you don't know where the food's coming from, if the mortgage isn't getting paid, if you're getting behind on the bills, you're never going to start a good business. It's just the facts. And you're busy now, right? You're training and you're working and all those sorts of things. So my advice is to find somewhere half an hour each day to work on the business. And my first thing would be to start getting jobs in digital media, doing stuff for other people. So you're getting experience, you're getting paid, and hope, over time you'll get good at that and you can start dropping off your corporate clients. And it'll make you feel better about your corporate clients because you're actually doing something. Your life and your brain and your body is seeing that you're moving forward. And that's the transition. That's how you you do a transition from here. Pete, thank you so much for being on today. Really, really appreciate it. I really encourage people to go on to, just as my iPad went to sleep, to Profit Hacks, eddale.co/Profit Hacks. Check it out. It really is a brilliant course. I really highly recommend it. Now, is that you're offering a money-back guarantee there, aren't you, Pete?
Mate, like always, of course, absolutely. So people can dive in there, start implementing some of these hacks, and if for whatever reason, bizarrely, it doesn't work for you, well, firstly, we've got Q&A calls. We've got 4 group Q&A calls over the next 4 weeks. So we'll actually be able to work with you and answer the questions and help you apply this stuff based on you, your business, and where you're at, more importantly. And if for some weird reason you want to, the money-back guarantee is there like every good product should have.
Yeah, look, and this is a course that I've seen, I've used, I've worked with Pete over the years. It's crucial to my business, and I really, really encourage it. And I hope we've given you a lot to think about in today's webinar. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate it. And we'll speak soon.
Thanks, guys. Nice to talk to you all.